Hey folks, Brian Haven's back, still working on my curved leg for the Asian cabinet. So this morning while I was eating breakfast, I started wondering how am I going to drop down this top of this leg while leaving the nub that's going to hold up the cabinet in place. And of course I could always do it by hand with some hand tools, but I gave it a little bit more thought, and I started thinking, you know, if I could just take this cabinet made and just rotate it 90 degrees on its side, if I could just hold the leg in that position. And as I was thinking about this, I realized that's what this other jig did. So it turns out I can use exactly the same jig that I used to cut to square up the mortise faces, to cut that, to lower that top of the leg. So I took my handy dandy jig, I removed the stop block off of the end of it, and the idea is that it's going to go back in the jig the same way as it did before, but I'm going to slide it over exactly how much I want to drop that the top of the leg, and raise the saw blade to the to the right height, and just nip away at it. So let's give that a try and see how it works. That would be so cool, because that way I used my jig for two tasks. Two birds with one stone. How cool would that be? There it is. You can see the top of the leg drop down. That's where the cabinet's going to float up, and this is going to be holding the cabinet up behind the trim. Now, I still have this to take care of though, but check this out. When I did my, when I squared up the mortise faces on these legs, I had planned on being able to just take this jig and rotate it and go to the other side of the table saw. That was in the last video. Well, it turns out that pretty much the same thing is going to work in this case. I can just take, we did this side just now, and I can simply just flip this jig over and take care of the rest of that top right there. How cool is that? There it is. There's my top of my leg. Cabinet's going to be up here. It's going to float. This you'll be able to see it if you look for it on the finished piece, but it'll still have the effect of having the cabinet float above. So yeah, I thought that was pretty cool, being able to use the same jig for multiple tasks on this leg. And in fact, I even found a third use for this jig. As you can see, I already cut the mortises in here with my domino. I actually don't know how else I would have gotten those mortises in there with this in the way, except for maybe the Garage Woodworks Godzilla, but I don't have time to make one of those right now. So I'll use my domino. But when I have this in the jig like that, you can see the mortise surface here. You can't even see that. The mortise surface here is the same level as this on the outside. So that gave me some extra support while I was trying to cut these with the domino. So 3 tasks, 1 jig. Now, so I was wondering, why is this jig seem to be solving so many issues when I'm making this leg? And I think the reason is it's solving a general problem. The general problem with the leg is that it's curved, but there's a particular position where the joinery is square to the rest of the piece, and this jig is holding it in that position. So it's serving for any kind of task where I have to do any kind of joinery on this leg. This jig seems to be just the ticket. So a couple more notes before I run. You notice that this, when I originally cut these mortise faces, this was all burned, and this surface on the inside was all grooved, because I was using the combination blade to nip away at that material. I actually did that nipping away. That wasn't the original plan, but as I started forming this face, I realized that was pretty much the easiest thing to do, is just to nip away at it. But I had the combination blade, which left those grooves that I was going to have to clean up. And then I remembered I have a ripping blade which has square top teeth. So I switched to using that one when I made the other leg, and as you can see, I didn't have those little V grooves that formed when I nipped away this material. And as well, I didn't have any burning on this face. So I even went back to the second leg and took off just the shaving and cleaned up all of those grooves. There's still some really tiny grooves, you probably can't see them on camera, so I'll still have to do a little cleaning up, but a lot less than. So one last note before I run. I noticed when I was looking over the last video that it looked like my hands were a lot closer to the saw blade than they actually were. There was some distance on the back side of the saw that wasn't apparent in the video. But nonetheless, to be even safer, I got my hands behind the clamp when I did the other leg, just to make sure, extra safe. I am fortunate enough to own a saw stop, but I always treat my saw as if it's not a saw stop. I don't rely on that safety feature because, for instance, you never know when I might be cutting on someone else's saw, and I don't want to get into bad habits. So yeah, I'm really happy that the safety feature's there, but I always act as if it's not. So that's all I have for today. If you have any questions, you can shoot me a note.